All right, here we go. It's episode 121 of the Daily Puck Drop here on Tuesday, May 28th. We missed you yesterday there on Memorial Day. In case you missed it, we did a special football show, by the way. We had Nolan Teasley. We had, who was the assistant GM of the Seahawks. We had Bobby Condotta of the Seattle Times. And then we had our handicapper, Troy Wins, from troywins.com. So if you want to catch up on all that stuff, episode 120, it was all football there yesterday, but episode 121 here on Tuesday after the long weekend. We had lots of baseball over the weekend in various places across the Pacific Northwest. I did an interview from my van. We'll get to that a little bit later in the program. And hey, what the puck? Did I say program? One of my from the South program. We got Mariners to talk about today. We've got something that finally happened in Major League Baseball concerning an umpire that, thank God, it finally happened. Looks like the Kraken got a new head coach. We lost a pioneer, a legend, not in just basketball with Bill Walton and broadcasting, but just as a person. And then just a tragic story coming out of golf that we'll cover. And then a hey, what the puck story that I think this is going to have a lot of legs and some teeth here, because if you've ever been kids in little league, baseball, whatever, you have used baseball or softball, you have used Game Changer, and you've probably been a parent that has had to be on Game Changer and do it. And I need a ruling as an official scorer of something that I did this weekend on Game Changer. And so we'll get to that as we wrap up on Hey, What the Puck here on Tuesday. And again, episode 121. Hey, Adam Jude, you son of a gun. Did you see what the Mariners did the last few days? Have you seen the resurgence of one Julio Rodriguez? Adam Jude, I'm talking to you. Calling me a dinosaur. They did something we've been begging for. Thank you, Scott Service. I might just write you a letter, a thank you note to say you are the best for trying it finally to hit him third. Now, again, it's a small sample size, but here's what we're going to do. We're going to celebrate the victories. And if he goes into another tailspin where he doesn't hit and perform, then we'll just gloss over the fact that he wasn't doing well. Okay. But last two games, they have put Julio Rodriguez there in the third spot, and he's had very good results for just 2 games. 5 hits in his last 2 games. Let's just keep him there. And if it continues to be great, gravy. If it doesn't work out, it goes to another tailspin and they want to move him, or eventually he starts hitting and they say, well, we need the more at bat, so we prefer him hitting second. Fine. You know, but us dinosaurs is what Adam Jude called me. And here's the thing about Jude. Here's the thing that pisses me off about Jude. He's a terrific writer. He appears to be a great husband. He appears to also be a great father, coaches baseball. And then he's really good looking and he's smart. And those are a combination that pisses me off, all of it. But a while back when I suggested, and that it was on an episode with myself and Bill Kruger had talked about, and I'm like, they should just try hitting him third. You know, I grew up in a day and age, I'm not that old, I'm 48, where your best hitter hit third. Now, again, I know the analytics. I know all of it. It suggests to hit second, get more at-bats. I totally understand it. I think there is, just me, a mentality of when you're the 3-hole hitter. Because I think there's a mentality of when you were growing up as a kid that your best hitter hit third. And I think that players, even someone of Julio's age, when he was probably coming up before, you know, analytics have maybe changed the game a little bit, probably hit third all the time. I think when he sees that it may just kind of force him to change a little bit, his mentality and maybe his approach. I mean, this game is very mental. Some would say it's more mental than physical. And when you kind of convince yourself as the 3-hole hitter, I'm the most important hitter, maybe that changes the way that he approaches to the plate. Or listen, it's a 2-game sample size. But as I said, I am going to celebrate the victories here until it maybe goes away. But I like it. I've wanted it to happen. Now, Jude's comeback was, well, their best hitter's hitting second, so hey, you can't argue that with Dylan Moore hitting there. But I'd like to see more of it. I'd like to see him hitting third and just see what happens with this offense. I mean, it's not like they've cured the offense. I mean, the offense still has their issues. It was awesome yesterday what they were able to do, right away to jump on Houston and to put up those runs. It's all the runs that they ultimately needed. And then Bryce Miller was able to kind of keep it together, piece it together, and fine. Ran in a little bit of trouble in the 5th inning, but gets out of that, turns it over to the bullpen. Bullpen was excellent. But yeah, just enough runs to get a victory after a pretty disappointing, not pretty, it was a disappointing road trip. I mean, to go 4-6 to lose 2 out of 3 of the Nationals, I mean, that shouldn't have happened to do that. But they bounce back. It's been a long stretch for them. It's a lot of baseball. They don't have a lot of breaks at all. And so they're grinding through it right now. And what they're finding is the teams below them aren't doing anything, right? Texas is not taking advantage of how the Mariners just played the last 10 games. They didn't take advantage at all. Houston was playing a little bit better of baseball, but with the Mariners able to beat him yesterday, now sits at 4.5 games back now. They are in the American League West, and you still look at Texas, and the Texas were about 3.5 back. But again, they are a flawed baseball team. But as and we'll talk about it later, as I was on with Aaron Levine on Seattle Sports Live on Fox 13 on Sunday, sitting in a parking lot, by the way, in my van. They're maddeningly, if that's a word, maddeningly, like Don Mattingly, maddening, I should say. They should say Don Mattingly. They're a maddening, flawed baseball team. And so the waves of emotion with these guys are just up and down. Because you get excited about what they did yesterday, early on, but then you grow frustrated as a fan, as just a watcher of baseball, that they can't put more runs together, they can't string more stuff together. But they make it entertaining, and every one of these games, God, it goes down to the last inning. They don't get many easy victories. They are built for close games, and that yesterday was just another example of another close game that they came through. As we're giving Scott service, as he took our recommendation, I believe it was our recommendation to hit Julio third. If we're going to give Scott service some feedback and maybe help him out a little bit, I know the intention, and I know that he is a perfect cleanup hitter, but I'm not sure why Mitch Garver has earned any right to hit cleanup. Now you'd say, well, what's the other option? Well, I'd put Cal Raleigh there. I'd let Cal Raleigh be my cleanup hitter. Because Mitch Garver, when you look at it, just is, and it has been a real struggle this year for Mitch Garver to do anything. And whether it's just coming over here, whether it's a change, the whole change in scenery that a lot of players struggle with, just Mitch Garver is just not a 4-hole hitter right now. I mean, the man is slugging .316 on the season. You talk about when you moved Julio down the lineup, and that clearly was try to message to kind of prod Julio to get going a little bit. And maybe this has worked out. I mean, he didn't really do anything as a 6-hole hitter. It's when you moved him up to hit him third, and then now all of a sudden he's been playing a little bit better. I mean, he had a few good games hitting 6. But the point being, you punished him, right? But then for Mitch Garver, there really has kind of been no punishment, it feels like. And I'm not saying you take him around the woodshed and like beat the guy down, but I don't know, putting him in that pretty valuable position there, which should be a cleanup hitter role. That's really shouldn't be where Mitch Garver should be at right now. But, again, it's not like they just got a bevy of options to sit there and hit guys. I mean, no one for the most part is slugging all that well. But Cal Raleigh, I'd put Cal Raleigh there, .431 slugging. I mean, I'd rather have him there than put Mitch Garver there. So if we could just make another suggestion to old Mr. Service, that would be the one that I would make. For those listening there on the podcast, Spotify, Apple, I had to take a sip of coffee. Momentary coffee break there. Logan Gilbert. I can't wait to talk to Bill Kruger. We didn't have him on yesterday because we just did our Memorial Day show and gave those guys a time off. So we'll talk to him next week. We'll get Brad Adam on today's show, which will release his podcast coming up at 1 o'clock. We'll hear from Divish coming up on Wednesday and get his thoughts on the whole Logan Gilbert pitching explanation and kind of you understand maybe what Scott Service was thinking. I get it with him. I mean, I understand the long play with Gilbert. I understand the long play with all of their pitchers. You don't want to wear these guys out in May, and then you depend on them in, July, or excuse me, August and September, and these guys are fatigued and they're all worn out. I guess I would understand it more. Logan Gilbert is in his first year or two. But this is now, Logan Gilbert is you could, I don't want to say a seasoned veteran, but he is certainly not a young pitcher anymore who needs a lot of babying. And I think that's kind of what they're doing a little too much with someone like Gilbert. Wu, on the other hand, I understand what they're doing with Brian Wu. I understand the temptation, though, for others who want him to finish an inning, who want him to pitch even more. Guy is coming off an arm injury. I think they do need to take it a little bit slower with Brian Wu and be a little cautious with him. I don't understand it with Logan Gilbert. So the decision to pull him out of the game the other day when he was sitting at, 78 pitches? I mean, he was cruising. I think in the inning, remember I wrote it down. In the inning before he left, I mean, what did he throw, like 9 pitches maybe? I get the heat. It was hot there. It's humid, probably, very uncharacteristic of that time of year to be that hot. The explanation that he had to run to first a bunch, I don't know. He's a pretty good looking athlete. I think he'd be okay. I think when it came to that decision, I think they've been a little too cautious with him. And I think the one way, I mean, there's difference of opinions on this one. Some would argue to build up arm strength and to fight through fatigue and to fight through injuries is actually to kind of pitch more to build up your arm strength and not just go to this threshold of 78 pitches or whatever you deemed it was. I don't necessarily think he went into the game, hey, all right, his pitch count's 78 and then we're done. I think he judged it and kind of played it on, was on the fly with that call. I think he factored on all the weather situation and things that he was going through. But I think the counter to Scott would be, yeah, but look how good he was. Like, he could have easily have gone one more inning. Hell, he probably could have gone 2 more innings. He was that dominant. So I share the frustration, I think, from a lot of you, Mariner fans, when it comes to how they are handling their pitching staff. I think the 4 guys, how they handle those guys, not so much how they handle Brian Wu. Because I get what they're doing with Brian Wu. I think you need to be extra cautious with him. And I don't mind him going out there and throwing 80 pitches and building it up. But, I mean, slowly but surely you're going to have to build it up a little bit more. Bill Kruger made the point you should have been building him up when he was in spring training. And then once he was built up to go more than 80 pitches, that's when you bring him up. And, I mean, he was dominant at Tacoma, so I get the flirtation to want to bring him up sooner rather than later. On the injury front, it was good to see Ryan Bliss come up. Of course, he was part of that trade, the Arizona trade with Seawald and Canzano and Rojas because of now the hamstring injury to Polanco. So Ryan Bliss, who has earned rave reviews down there in Tacoma. He's a little guy. He's 5'7", about a 170-ish. Played second base, didn't boot a ball, but had an error yesterday. And I loved when he was first at bat. I think they always tell these guys, first swing is all you. If it's close to the plate, just swing. And he did just that. So be interesting to see what his role will do. How long will Polanco be out for? Justin Hollander didn't seem like he was all that concerned about the injury there to Jorge Polanco, but a hamstring injury, those things tend to kind of linger, even though that Hollander said it would be not a lengthy stay there on the injury list. This goes back to the offseason and the construction of this baseball team. That was flawed, is that you acquired guys that just can't stay healthy. And once again, Jorge Polanco is showing you that he cannot stay healthy. And he's missing a bunch of games. Garver hasn't been productive. And again, it goes back to this. They are 3 games over 500 and have a 3.5 game lead in the West. And it's amazing. It truly is amazing where they're at right now. It's fun. It's fun because it's unpredictable. It's maddening at the same time because you were begging for them to do more there in the off season. One sneaky move to kind of keep an eye on, and I'm curious to see what he does in Tacoma and whether or not we see him at the end of the summer. Tyler Locklear has been promoted from AA Arkansas to Tacoma, and much harder, much more difficult to hit down in AA Arkansas than it will be in Tacoma. That's for sure. And Tyler Locklear, the right-hand first baseman, tore up AA. It's great. 291, 401, 532, and then had a 993 OPS. He's ranked number 5 in the Mariners system. It'd be interesting to kind of keep an eye on how fast the rise there of Tyler Locklear will be. The Bet M's Under Summer Tour continues, and folks, it was a great weekend, a great long weekend for old Puck over there at the DraftKings Sportsbook app. They covered on Friday. The total was 7.5. They ended up losing 6-1. They covered on Saturday, which was the 3-1 loss. The total that night was 9.5. Sunday was a no cover because the total was 9.5, and they ended up winning 9-5. Monday they covered. Total was 7.5, 3-2 win. So 3-1 in our last 4. That brings our overall record to our Bet M's Under Summer Tour to 11, 14, and 1. Tonight's total is 7.5. DraftKings Sportsbook app. Head up to the Toledo Resort Casino to make your legal wager on it. Luis Castillo against Hunter Brown tonight. And then tomorrow it's George Kirby, Justin Verlander. And then Thursday, Logan Gilbert gets the ball. A guy I've never heard of. Spencer Arrighetti. Never heard of him. Fangraphs came out with their power rankings. And the Mariners currently number 9 in the Fangraphs power rankings. 57% chance to make the playoffs. I would think if you were number 9, you would have better odds to make the playoffs. It does feel like, I mean, I think we've said this before, and it kind of remains true. It really feels like they need to win the West. They need to win the West in order to get in there to the playoffs. I don't think they can sit there and just rely potentially on a wild card. But 9th place there in the power rankings, 57% chance to make the playoffs. They've got to get aggressive at the deadline. We're just going to keep probably repeating that most every single day when we do the daily puck drop. All right, most every single day, because their pitching is just too good for them to sit back and do nothing. And whoever it is, I mean, we've really focused on Pete Alonso. And because of the Mets, the Mets probably going to move him, and we've brought up Harry Ford. I'm not obsessed with prospects, pitching prospects. Yes, with these guys, but not so much the position players. But they need an impactful bat. Hell, I can almost say they need 2. But they need to lengthen this lineup. They need to just get some more offense. So they're just not going into every single game, which they are again. They are maddening to watch, but also fun to watch because every game is kind of edge of your seat close. But they need to start winning a few more games a little easier than always these one-run games, depending on the bullpen, because that's a hard way to win. I mean, go through an entire season playing that way. I mean, they play a playoff-style baseball, but they're playing it during the regular season. Yeah, it's awesome during the playoffs. It's great during the playoffs, but it's kind of troublesome when you're doing that during the regular season. Boy, Major League Baseball finally got something right, huh? Because what this is they push this guy out. This is not, I am taking a retirement, Angel Hernandez, Major League Baseball umpire. This isn't, I'm stepping away because I'm tired and want a break. Major League Baseball just pushed him out, finally. And why they can't just publicly, because of the union, just say, we're firing the guy, we're moving on. The Major League Baseball Umpires Association and the way that Major League Baseball handles umpires is really funny, because in all walks of life, when you have a job, you get fired or removed for poor performance. And companies don't hide that. They just tell you straight up, yeah, you didn't perform well, you're out. I mean, that's still really the way it should be done, correct? Probably people watching this, listening to this, you've been fired from something. And probably because you weren't doing the job. He hasn't been doing the job for years. He should have been removed years ago. I mean, he sued the league, for crying out loud. for racial discrimination because he was being left off like postseason assignments. He was being left off because he's not good. I mean, they have a real problem with their umpires and just not being able to punish these guys publicly, admonish them publicly. Everybody else faces criticism except Major League Baseball umpires. This is why there's such a push to have, robot umps, because of guys like him, CB Buckner, and others. That people just have been tired of it. Tired of just they have become part of the game, and they shouldn't become part of the game. They should just be there, not part of the game. No one goes to the ballpark to see these guys ump. No one does. So, hey, happy retirement there to Angel Hernandez. Way overdue for you, bud. Way overdue. Looks like the Kraken have got a new head coach. Dan Bilesma is going to be introduced this morning as the new head coach of the Seattle Kraken. Kind of just felt obvious, even from this neophyte hockey guy, just kind of when they hired him a few years ago to run Coachella Valley, it really just felt like you're hiring this guy and he's going to be the coach in waiting, that if and when Dave Hackstall leaves, gets fired, whatever, Bilesma will be right there and he'll be the next head coach. So whether this was their guy all along and they just waited to sit there and talk to other people, which is always good because you always want to do your due diligence, maybe another candidate that you talk to blows you away that you really weren't familiar with. He said, all right, well, maybe that's the option. Maybe that was the guy at Carolina, but then they just couldn't, even talk to him because he ends up signing a contract extension. But Stanley Cup champion in 2009. I mean, he inherited that team, right? I think it was after 20 or 25 games that he comes in there. He had superstars. He didn't have to build anything up in Pittsburgh. He was handed the keys to the car and just said, don't drive it off the road. It was very Barry Switzer-like when Barry Switzer was handed the keys there to the Dallas Cowboys. He goes to the Sabres. It doesn't work out there. By all accounts, he's been a runaway success in Coachella Valley, coaching all this younger talent. It was a great story and detailed in Jeff Baker's piece in the Seattle Times this morning, how all the younger players love him. He gave the example of when they were playing the LA Kings this year and a loss. The younger players embraced him because Bilesma came out from Coachella Valley to talk to those guys and meet with them, and that it was a very odd scene of like talking to those guys and those guys happy to see him. And then, like, I think it was, as Jeff wrote, like down the hallway, Dave Hackstall's talking about another tough loss. But let's see how Dan Bilesma will do here as the new Kraken head coach, which is just a massively pivotal year for the Kraken. They lost a lot of goodwill this past season, I think, with their new fan base. Not the true hockey guys. The true hockey fan is there. But the ones that were on the edge, they lost that. They lost that. And the season ticket, they lost a lot of season ticket holders. They need to win those people back, maybe go on the free television, with King 5 will help people maybe get engaged a little bit more. I don't think the whole thing with Root had anything to do with the lack of popularity for the Seattle Kraken. I just think that people weren't tuned into the Kraken because they didn't do anything in the offseason, kind of like the M's. And then they pretty much from the get-go were just underachieved all season long. And I think when you have fans that are on kind of the edge of whether or not they want to be a hockey fan or not, when you don't put out an engaging product out on the ice, people just aren't going to pay attention. And that's what happened this year. Sad news that came out yesterday. And I don't know how many people knew this. I didn't know if I'd missed something, and I didn't know if this was public knowledge, but Bill Walton passing away yesterday at the age of 71, colon cancer. And it seemed like he probably kept this pretty private, that many people didn't know that he actually was sick. We'll talk to John Canzano today. His episode will be released at 1 o'clock. And so we'll talk to John and see if he had any indication, any idea. He wrote a tremendous piece up at johncanzano.com. Go check it out. Go subscribe, donate, read all of John's work. It's terrific as always. And he just touched on how, the first sign that, hey, maybe something was up. Maybe he's not doing well. He wasn't at the Pac-12 basketball tournament. And so I think a lot of people thought, well, maybe maybe something's going on. And so, yeah, it's just sad news. I never got to see him play as a player. I mean, it was kind of before my time. I've seen all the highlights and the dominating performances. The national championship game was at UCLA. He missed one shot and he had 44 points. And his passing ability, his defense, injuries robbed him of. He's still a Hall of Famer, but injuries robbed him, to his feet and his ankles and his knees of perhaps going down as one of the greatest centers of all time. When we talk about Kareem, Hakeem, we talk about Bill Russell, all of them, Chamberlain. I know I'm going to miss Shaq. I'm going to miss somebody. Jack Sikma, Benoit Benjamin, all the greats. But the guy that I know is the guy that I grew up with, which has like kind of a two-part life though. Because when he was on NBC, and that was, the NBC telecast, everything in that time that NBC had the NBA contract, it all worked together. All at the right time. Because Michael Jordan was, and still remains, the greatest basketball player that we've ever seen. So it's his rise with the Bulls, taking over the mantle from the from the Bird and Magic era. It's the NBC production, right? It's John Tesh, Round Ball Rock, that. It's Bob Costas. It's Snapper Jones. It's Ahmad Rashad. It's Hannah Storm. And then, of course, it's Bill Walton. They all it was a perfect mix at the right time for all of it to succeed. And he was on those great NBA broadcasts. Doug Collins was also a part of that. And so it's weird when you think about Bill Walton, that's what I first remember him as just I knew he played, and I knew he played for the Blazers. I knew all the injury history, but I remember him as just the NBA broadcaster. And he wasn't, he was good, and he had a good sense of humor, and he was a terrific analyst. And I always loved the fact that, he overcame his stuttering problem as a kid, then to challenge himself to get better at it, to improve on it, to be confident enough to, once he overcame it, but still probably pretty shy about it, to then go on national TV and do that. That's got to be pretty damn scary. But there's a two-part act with him, because the broadcaster he was at NBC doing the NBA is not the broadcaster he was when he went to ESPN and went to Pac-12 Network. The craziness, the philosopher, the poet, the stoner, the T-shirts, the wacky things he would say, the run-on sentences, the rambling, all of that. That was a totally different character for Bill Walton. And so it's probably more what Bill was, that he wasn't giving you on the NBC broadcasts, in which he was terrific on the NBC broadcasts. But I think what you saw eventually on ESPN and the Pac-12 Network is he became himself a little bit more. And he was hilarious. For some people, they couldn't stand him because they just didn't like it. They want all basketball. I want the basketball 101. I want the analysis. I don't want that stuff. I mean, you can listen to this or watch this. I want to be entertained. And he entertained me. Whether it was a close game or a blowout, especially when it's a blowout, you need to be entertained in a blowout. In a close game, he was great as well. But what I loved about him more than anything, and probably a lot of you as well, his deep-rooted, passionate love for this conference, for the Pac-12. And he was steadfast in that love for that conference. And, it probably broke his heart, to see his beloved UCLA Bruins now go play in the Big Ten. He was not a supporter of it, didn't like it one bit. Not one bit. And there is some great irony in that truly the Pac-12 kind of over, at least from the network side, happened this past weekend with the baseball tournament, the last game, the semifinals, happening this past weekend on the Pac-12 network. Then a few days later, Bill Walton passes, because, there is no Pac-10, Pac-8, Pac-12 without Bill Walton. And he was the biggest supporter. So He was a champion in so many ways, not just as a player, broadcaster, father, son, husband, but just a person. So rest in peace, Bill Walton. Also, rest in peace, another sad story, Grayson Murray, the golfer, 30 years old, who withdrew from the Colonial, walked off the course on 16, pulled out, citing health issues, health reasons. And if you don't know the Grayson Murray story, he's a gentleman that battled alcoholism, an addiction to alcohol, battled depression, anxiety. He goes back to his hotel room. Next morning, it's announced that he has passed away. I think everybody initially, the immediate response is that he took his own life, but you can't say anything because you don't know yet. Family then releases a statement that he indeed did take his own life, and it's just tragic news for Grayson Murray. He was open about his addiction. He was open about his anxiety. He was open about his depression, and he was open about it because he wanted to help other people. And he knew that if he, as an athlete, as a professional golfer, he had a voice to many that would listen to him, and he felt that his voice was powerful and that he could make some changes for other people. And that's what he did. And he helped a lot of people out. But ultimately, in the end, he couldn't help himself out. And that it's just, it's deeply sad and troubling, because I think you look at someone like a Grayson Murray or anyone that is in the public eye, in the spotlight, famous. I think of Robin Williams a lot when these things happen. Robin Williams and Grayson Murray, these guys are beloved. People look up to these guys. Countless, young golfers look up to Grayson Murray. He's signing autographs. He's their hero. A guy like Grayson Murray has accomplished something that 1% of the population get to accomplish. He's a professional athlete. All the goals, all the hard work that he sacrificed and that he worked as a kid all the way through, and the countless hours of dedicating yourself to your craft, and putting aside friends and family, and just the hard work that goes into that. I think many people look at someone like Grayson Murray or any professional athlete or anyone that's famous, whether it's music, entertainment, what have you, and they take their own life. I think the natural reaction is, because I have it, it's like, God, why? What do you have to be depressed about? You've accomplished so much. You impact so many people's lives. But that's the thing. A lot of times, people like Grayson Murray or Robin Williams, use humor to mask what's going on, and to deflect it. And so, everyone's has their own issues and their own demons, and it's hard. Life's hard. It really is. And you probably ask yourself, and Grayson Murray's family and friends probably ask themselves, what else could we have done? What are the signs? And I think a lot of times you see the signs and you still can't help that individual. It all, ultimately comes down to them and whether or not they can pull themselves, away from their darkness and their sadness. So rest in peace also there to Grayson Murray, gone way, way, way too soon. Looking like we're going to have two sweeps in the NBA Finals. They've been anticlimactic. They've been really, really boring. Although the play has been fun to watch. I'm just saying the games, the individual games have been fun. But the series, like, you want this to extend a little bit more, not just have two sweeps. But like the Mavs T-Wolves games, they have been fun. Just that the Mavericks have pulled them out every single time. But it looks like it's going to be Maverick, Dallas, and Boston. Well, it will be. Dallas either is going to sweep them, they're not going to lose the series. I would say it's great for the NBA because they need, superstars to take a mantle, right? To take the mantle from someone else. And Luka can be that guy in the NBA Finals. It's not Jaylen Brown, and it's not Jason Tatum that takes the mantle. It's a guy that globally can, influence many, and that person is Luka Doncic. So Luka, for the NBA, for him to be on the biggest stage internationally, the best news is Luka being in the NBA Finals, and then probably winning them. Big thanks to Aaron Levine, Seattle Sports Live. I was on that show on Sunday from a baseball field in Tacoma to talk about our interview with Nolan Teasley. So big thanks to Aaron and Fox 13, Ethan and those guys over there for having me on. I did this show from my van And I'm going to say it's a pretty damn good setup in the van. You can go check it out, Seattle Sports Live. I'll tweet it out. I'll put it up probably on the webpage at pucksports.com. You can just go to the top on the tab and go to blogs, and I'll have it up there. If you want to just see how good looking I am from my van. But I mean, I think I might just take the show in the van and just drive around. I mean, like an hour before I did that interview, I had a bunch of 10-year-olds in there were making hot dogs. That came off wrong. I had a bunch of 10-year-olds in there making that didn't sound right. Grilling hot dogs for a bunch of baseball players. All right, goodness gracious. But go check it out. Big thanks to Aaron and Fox 13. All right, finally, hey, what the puck, and we'll end on this one. Speaking of baseball, now we had 4 games this weekend. This is for club baseball. This is not Little League. I don't coach. I don't do anything. But I like to keep busy. And no one, although there were people that would volunteer, no one really ever wants to do Game Changer. They like to say I can do it it's always, I can do it if you need me to. But no one wants to do it because it's maddening. If you're not familiar with it, and if people who don't know what Game Changer is, let me quickly explain it to you, because there might be someone listening or watching and they have no idea what this is. Game Changer is an app on your phone that you use to track. It's primarily for softball and baseball games. It's just a scorebook, and you're tracking hits and walks and pitch counts and all that kind of stuff. But it's a lot. And sometimes when a lot is happening and there are like rulings and errors and people out of, like, we had this weekend a team that just put in an entirely wrong lineup. And so we're having to go through that whole thing and that fiasco of a guy hitting when he shouldn't be hitting. And is that an out or not an out? I still honestly at this time do not know what the exact ruling was, but you got to get the lineup from the other team. There's a lot going on when you are the person in charge for Game Changer. I volunteered and I said, you know what? I don't mind doing it. I actually like doing it. Actually, I shouldn't say that out loud, that I like doing it, but I like doing it. Gives me something to do. And then I just don't sit there and can stew at things that happen during the game, because I can't really stew at anything happening during the game because I've got to sit there and be on Game Changer. So it was my turn to be on Game Changer. Now, we had a play in particular in our games on Saturday that I put a poll question out up on X right now. You can go vote. I think it's also on Instagram, but no, I think it's just on X. And I need a ruling, error or hit. So here's the situation. Pop fly, okay, not hit particularly high. Pop fly on the shortstop side, probably 2 feet in to the right of second base. Both the shortstop and second base, though, are playing fairly close to second base. The ball hits in the air. Neither of them move to get the ball. It ultimately lands about 3 or 4 feet from the shortstop. And so then I'm left like, well, is that a hit or is that an error? Now, maybe under the definition of an error, because neither player made a move to the ball. When I mean neither player made a move to the ball, neither player, they just sat there. No one moved. Confusion, probably, all that kind of stuff. Just no one moved. So the ball just falls on the ground. Now, neither of them tried to attempt to get it, so it didn't go off anyone's glove or anything like that. So I looked at it, I thought about it, I said, God, at this age, at this level of play, like, someone should catch that. I don't know if I feel a good conscience to give the kid a hit. So I gave our team an error on that. So I need to know, what do you think the ruling should be? Am I wrong? I mean, I could very well be wrong. I can always go back and change it too. Should I have given that an error or given that a hit? Am I just, that's got to be caught, right? I mean, someone's got to catch it. You can't just let the ball bounce, just drop on you. All right. There was no infield fly rule either. So, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of split right now. Last time I checked, it was kind of even Steven like 48% think it's a hit, for like 46 not, like right in there. So like 50-50. And I've a lot of great feedback there on X, and also I posted up on Instagram. By the way, Instagram Puck2040. If you want to follow me on Instagram, also on Facebook, both are up there at Puck2040. Just want to get that out there for people that don't know. We'll put up new and different content and all of our interviews and clips and stuff up at Puck2040 on Instagram and Facebook. But I don't know. Ball lands between shortstop and second base. No one attempts to go for it. And it was hit not super high, but high enough to where you easily could have got over there. It's just that no one moved. Sun didn't play a factor into it. So I gave us an error. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Sound here in the comment section. Let me know. If you were scoring it on Game Changer, how would you have scored that? Hit or an error? We'll ask Canzano later today. Also, Brad Adam. They're coming up today at 1 o'clock. Brad Adam, we moved him to Tuesdays. Brought to you by John Howie Steak. We'll talk a little Mariners baseball on his episode coming up later today. We released at 1. Also, John Canzano, today at 1 o'clock as well. We'll talk a lot about Bill Walton. We tabled this last week. But he talked about this and wrote it in his mailbag section, then talked about it in his radio show. Transgender athletes down in Portland, the debate between performing in sports, transgender athletes, and there was some controversy between that in a girls' event in track and field. And so much, it was a great story that John took it to the radio show, had a great discussion about it, took a lot of calls on it. So we'll talk about that coming up today there with John Canzano. But we appreciate episode 121 in the books here on Tuesday, the Daily Puck Drop, the DPD. And again, Brad Adam and John Canzano coming up a little bit later today. We'll talk to you tomorrow. As always, we promise to be better.
No shirt, no shoes, no ties.
Would anybody like to smoke some pot?
Yeah.
I was born to love you. I was born to lick your face. I was born to rub you. But you were born to rub me first.
What do you need my address for?
We'd like to send out a mailer.
Mother of mercy, I don't speak Japanese!